Good day, students. It's class time. Watch lessons in real time on the Television Jamaica YouTube channel or One Spot Media. We also are live on gojamaica.com. If you have questions on today's subjects, you can send them to the Television Jamaica's Facebook page at Television Jamaica or Instagram at television_Jamaica or use the hashtag TVJClassTime. I'm Vanessa Francis, and I will be guiding you through the CSEC English language this week. We are going to be looking at CSEC English SBA Part 2. So, today we are going to be looking at Reflection 3, the oral presentation, the written report, and we're going to do a little recap first. So, here are our objectives for today. So you're going to review the previous lesson. You're going to describe the processes associated with Reflection 3. You're going to explain the requirements of the oral presentation as well as the written report. So last week we looked at the plan of investigation, we looked at the Reflection 1, and we looked at Reflection 2. So if you remember, the plan of investigation, it's basically the introduction. So you don't have a separate introduction. The plan of investigation is your introduction. And there are certain key elements that you have to ensure that you include. For the Reflection 1, you're looking at each of your 3 artifacts. For each artifact, you're going to say how it impacted your thinking on the topic that you're doing. And in order to do that, you're going to look at whether it added to your thoughts, whether it reinforced your thoughts, or if it completely changed your viewpoint on the topic. For Reflection 2, you're looking at the 3 pieces again, but for a different reason. This time you're looking at it in order to say how language was used in each one. All right, so now that we have that clear, we can move ahead. Reflection 3. So what is it? It's basically an explanation of the process that you used in the SBA and how it has made you a better person. So you're going to explain to your examiner how it is that you have changed for the better between the start of the SBA and the present moment. What should you do? Of course, you need to discuss the skills and attributes that you have developed, and you have to say how they were developed. You can't just say, well, I gained this skill or that skill and just leave it there. No, we need to explain how it went. So here are some examples of skills that you may talk about. So you can talk about your interpersonal relations. So perhaps you started out being very shy, very antisocial perhaps, but throughout the course of doing the SBA, having to interact with your group mates, having to interact with your classmates perhaps, then your interpersonal skills would have been developed. Think about time management. We mentioned that before. So the whole idea of having to meet deadlines, of having to submit your pieces on time. Think about your confidence. Again, perhaps you were very shy and perhaps you were not really the type of person to speak up. However, throughout the course of having to do your oral presentation, of having to make mini presentations leading up to that, your confidence was built. Think about your expression, both written and oral. Remember, you have to write certain sections, but then you also have to communicate through speech as well. So you have to talk. You have to talk a lot. If you don't like to talk, you will learn how. Think about your critical thinking skills. So when you were reading the different articles or different pieces, when you were watching different items, when you were listening to different things, you had to think about them. You had to process them. You had to think about, how can I use this? Can I use this? Should I use this? That sort of thing. When you were writing the different sections, you had to think about what you were doing. Were you on the right track? Or were you going off on a tangent? So these are the critical thinking skills activities that would be coming about. Think about work ethic. Work ethic meaning how seriously you had to approach this SBA. So perhaps you were the last minute person, perhaps you were the slacker, but because you had to consistently work at this, your work ethic possibly improved. So maybe you had to just get serious and say, listen, this is my grade is important, let's work at it. And of course, what new knowledge have you gained? So throughout the course of reading different things, watching different things, listening to different things, some knowledge must have come into play at some point in time. So you can speak about that. What new things did you learn? And how are they going to help you in the future? Now, it is advised that you write this reflection last. So it is the last thing that you write. And it should be obvious why, because you have to talk about everything that has impacted on you. So it's good to leave it for the very last piece that you write, and then you put it with the other reflections. Keep in mind, even though we have been talking about the reflections separately, what will happen is you have one section labeled reflection, and all three of them run concurrently. So you type the first one, drop it in. The second one, you just add that to it. The third one, you add that to it. So you're not going to label them reflection 1, 2, 3. You're just going to label reflections, and you have them running one behind the other. So now for the written report. This is a 250 to 300 word summation of the procedures and processes and the outcomes of conducting the research. You have been doing a research, you have been learning how to do a research. So this is a point at which you're going to say how you have more or less understood the processes involved. So the first step, among the group members, you're going to decide on 2 research questions. So everybody would have had their own personal research questions going into their own SBA. So you can come together and decide which 2 to use from among all of your SBA questions. Remember, it's 4 or 5 of you in the group, so that should be quite a number of questions to choose from. Then, you're going to select from among your artifacts which artifacts to analyze. So again, you each would have had your 3 artifacts. So you're going to come together, you're going to look at them, and then based on the questions that you chose, you're going to see which artifacts, which 3, fit those questions, answer those questions. Again, just as with your personal SBA, one of the artifacts chosen has to be paper-based. So what you can do, everybody presents their paper-based artifact, you pick one from among them, and then you just do a random shuffling of the rest. You read them, you analyze them, you watch, whatever the case may be, and decide on which 2 additional ones you want to include. Third step, you have chosen artifacts, so of course you have to justify why you chose the artifacts. So give meaningful explanations of why you chose each piece. You're analyzing the artifacts now in the next step. So you're going to briefly describe what strategy you use to analyze it. One strategy is soapstones. You can look that up. So you look at things like the author, you look at the tone, you look at the context, and so on. Now, for each of your research questions, what you need to do is show the relationship to the artifact, of course, and you're going to show the relationship to the outcome, because after you have read or watched whatever it was, you had a conclusion that you drew. So you're going to relate the artifact to the question that you chose, and then the artifact and the question to the subsequent outcome. Next, you're really saying how and to what extent the artifacts answer the question. So, to recap for this particular section, so you're going to select 2 research questions. Remember, everybody comes together, you contribute your questions, pick 2 out of those. Then you're going to select 3 artifacts to analyze. Remember now, one has to be paper-based. Then you're going to justify why that particular artifact, those particular artifacts were selected. So you have to say why you chose these 2. Then you're going to analyze each artifact in relation to both the research question and, of course, the outcome of the research. So to what extent did it answer the research question? Now for the oral presentation. Now this section is the one that many students dread. So if you're not the outgoing type, if you're not the performance type, then this one will seem a little daunting. However, have no fear. Practice is here. So this section now is a personal response of 3 to 5 minutes on a selected issue, topic, theme, or event based on the information that you gathered in the research. So remember, prior to this, you weren't really delving into the information that you got. What you were doing was just talking about the process of collecting it. You were talking about how it impacted on you. You talked about how language was used. For this section, you're going to actually share the information now. So what should you do? First thing you need to do is have a little introduction. So before you actually start, you have your introduction, which is a brief overview of the presentation. And you're going to say what genre you chose. You're going to say the sources that you used. And you're going to comment on the kind of language that you're using in the presentation. So the genre that you choose can be drama. So if you're a theater arts student, that's right up your alley. If you're a literature student, right up your alley. You can do a poem. You can do prose. So you can write a story, if anything. You can choose to do a role play. You can just write a speech. You can write an argument, or you can do an expository piece. Now, this, of course, would depend on several factors. Your personality, which one suits your personality best. If you're very gregarious, then of course, go big, go home. If you're a little reticent or a little shy, then you pick something that you're very comfortable with, because at the end of the day, you don't want to put yourself at a disadvantage, because you would have done all this work leading up to the oral presentation. You don't want to let the oral presentation be the cause of a low grade. So try and be comfortable with whatever you choose. So if you're a poet, then you can always go to town, write a poem about your situation, your issue, your topic, your theme, your event. If you like writing stories, then see how you can write a story that brings out everything that you need. If you're just an orator, then of course, write a speech. And if you like to argue, as many of you do, then of course, write an argument. And exposition, as we had mentioned before, you are really just looking at the whole idea of giving a list of details. So you're really not going to be so creative in this sense, but if that is what you're comfortable with, nothing wrong with that. So at the end of the day, what you really need to make sure you do, stay true to yourself and ensure that whatever genre you choose, it is something that you are comfortable with, that you are capable of pulling off, and that you have had enough time to practice with as well. So if you want to challenge yourself and push the boundaries, then try and make sure that you put in enough practice, all right? So of course, we said you're going to share. All right, so we're going to pause right here and take a quick break. Stay with us.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.
Welcome back. So we're continuing our look at the oral presentation. So when we broke, you were looking at the fact that you're supposed to share your information on the issue, topic, theme, or event that you have selected. So at this point, you're going to put it together in a creative manner so that you can share the information, edify your listeners, your audience. Remember, you have to keep your audience in mind. So you don't want to have a presentation that is too drawn out. You have 3 to 5 minutes. For some, that sounds like a lot of time. For some, that sounds like a little bit of time. But trust me, if you have a really excellent presentation put together, then of course, you are fine. Now, remember, it is an English SBA, therefore you're expected to use predominantly standard English. Now, yes, you're allowed to use a little bit of Creole, you know, a little spice, a little flavor, a little something, something. However, the bulk of what you have to say should be delivered in the standard English. Now, you are going to submit a brief plan of this presentation in the actual portfolio. So keep in mind, the portfolio doesn't include the whole presentation. So if you wrote a poem, you're not going to include the poem in there. You're going to put in a plan, which we will look at shortly. So here is an example of the plan. Now notice you have the topic there. In this case, it's My Hair Journey. And the genre is poetry. So this person would have written a poem. And then there are the sources that were used. These are the same 3 artifacts that you would have mentioned in your plan of investigation. The same 3 artifacts you would have talked about in your reflections 1 and 2. Now, the language used, so this person has decided to describe what was done in the poem. So rhyme and rhythm were used, humor as well to make the message more acceptable. There was repetition, there's intonation, there's gesticulation, of course, because it's a presentation, so you want to put a few gestures in there that are appropriate. And these are used to make the message more memorable. Then, of course, the main idea is that hair is acceptable in any texture. And then the aids that were used, different types of weave. So you are allowed to use various things like props. So you can, based on what your topic is, whatever is appropriate, you can dress up. So you don't necessarily have to wear your uniform. Clear it with the teacher first, please. So you can dress up, you can have a costume, you can have different props, you can have visual aids. So anything that will help your presentation along, help your presentation to have a more visual and oral impact. So these are the things to remember for the oral presentation. So give a brief overview. Remember, that would serve as an introduction. So you are going to say, use a genre that you are comfortable with, one that you have had practice with, and one that is suitable to the actual presentation as well. You're relating the information you gathered. So this is where you talk about your issue or topic or theme or event at length. You are to use predominantly standard English. Yes, a little Creole can be used. However, it is an English SBA, so you want to use predominantly standard English. And the important thing to note, you're submitting the plan of the presentation in your portfolio, not the entire presentation. Keep that in mind, please. So, we're going to look at your rubrics now. Now, here we are looking at the plan of the investigation. So, please just pay attention to the highest bracket, which is to the far corner there. You do not need to know what gives you 0 or 1. You want to look at what gives you 3 for the maximum where 3 counts. You want to look at what gives you 2 where 2 is the maximum. So under the reasons for choosing the topic and the selection of the title, of course, for the full marks, you need to have an original and insightful reason. And of course, you gave the title. So you must say what it was that you were writing about. Then under the expected benefits to you as a student, for the maximum marks, you need to clearly state the benefits, and you need to make sure that your benefits are sound and that they're attainable. Now, the next section is split in two. So the overall heading is that it is the proposal for collection and use of the material. So for the full 2 marks, you need to know that the material should be collected. You stated this. You gave the type, you gave the nature. Remember, we discussed that when we were looking at this section. And you give a variety of sources. Keep that in mind. A variety of sources, not just 1 or 2. For the next part, where the next 2 marks comes in, you showed how the use of English skills are going to be utilized. They're clearly outlined, and you give a clear indication of how they will be used. All right, your next rubric, of course, is for the reflection. Now, the reflection, even though it's 3 different parts, it's marked out of 5. So to get the full 5 marks, you have to complete more or less the ultimum for all 3 reflections. So if you look at the very top tier there, notice it says you produce an excellent reflection comprising of 3 entries. Remember, reflection 1, 2, and 3. So you would have had to discuss how the 3 pieces of material have affected your thinking about the issue. That would be reflection 1. You would have had to examine the use of language in 3 pieces. That's reflection 2. And you would have had to discuss the process and its effect. So that would be reflection 3. Very good. Now for the written report rubric. This one is a little more challenging and technical. So you're marked for content, and to get the full marks for content, you would have had to show the context from which the stimuli is chosen is explicitly given. So you would have had to basically state which artifacts you used and where you got them. So the things like your title, the author, if there's an author, singer, if it's a song, that sort of thing. There is clear evidence of the procedure used in selecting the 3 stimuli. So you would have explained how it is you decided on those 3 artifacts. It shouldn't come off as if you just put them in a bucket and did a raffle and pick out 3. Now, the issues raised in the stimuli are clearly defined and fully explored. So you would have had to talk about how these artifacts relate. Remember, we said you're going to talk about how they relate to the question that you chose and how they relate to the outcome that you had. Then you're going to talk about the relevant tasks, so the processes and the procedures which would have been performed by the group, and you're going to talk about how you went about reporting it and that sort of thing. It's a report, so you're basically just outlining what you did and how it was done. The next thing you're marked for, evidence of investigation. So for this, it's marked out of 3. So for the total of 3, you would need to give an excellent response to the tasks. These are they. So the analysis focuses on key issues. So when you are analyzing each piece, you did not stray, you did not have anything going off on a tangent, you stayed on point. The findings of discussions and research of the relevant stimulus are clearly stated. So you give a conclusion. You say, based on this, we conclude that. All the sources are acknowledged and documented. So if you chose an article, if you chose a song, if you chose a video, we know exactly where it came from because you stated where it came from. And any comments on the stimuli, apart from your original comments, are appropriately acknowledged and documented. So if you, for instance, cite one of the sources or more than one, you need to make sure that you clearly state that such and such said in such and such. Don't let it come off like it's your words when it wasn't your words. Remember, plagiarism is strongly frowned upon. Plagiarism will get you that same little letter we talked about last week. Don't want it. The next thing you're marked for in the written report is language use and vocabulary. Yes, it's an English SBA. Of course, you're going to be marked for language use and vocabulary. So for the maximum score of 3, you would have to show excellent use of standard English and, of course, appropriate tone and register. And your vocabulary would show excellent knowledge of the interaction with the issues and context. So the way you talked about your artifacts and your research question and the outcomes shows a level of maturity, shows a level of proficiency in the language. Now, these rubrics are for the sections that you do not submit in the portfolio. So you are marked for your oral presentation, of course. So going into it, these are the things you need to ensure you do. So you're marked for fluency of delivery. For the maximum 3, it needs to be intelligible, as in it must be able to hear you. It must be clear. It must be smooth. It must be well-paced. So try not to talk too fast so that your words are running into each other and you can't be understood. Try not to talk too slow that people end up falling asleep. The next thing you're marked for is the structure, comprehensibility, and the development of the topic. For the maximum 4 marks this time, it must be clear in organization and ideas. So when you're putting the different things together in your story, in your poem, in your speech, whatever it is, everything must come together clearly in a structured and organized manner. You must have sustained treatment of the topic or theme or issue. So you should not end up going off on a tangent. Stay on point. If you're talking about your hair journey, if you're talking about love, if you're talking about technology, remain on that track. Now, your style is also supposed to be very effective and impactful. So if you choose to do a poem, then naturally there are certain things that should come out of you. It should be poetic. It should flow. If you're going to be dramatic, then of course, like I said, go big or go home. If you're just going to do a speech, even if you're going to do a simple speech, please, again, don't just stand there and talk like this and then everybody is like, what is he or she doing up there? No, you don't want it to be robotic. So you want to at least infuse some amount of style into it, your own personal style. And if you don't have personal style, you have time. Language use and vocabulary. Again, it is an English SBA, so yes, we're going to mark it for language. So, accurate use of grammar. This is outside of the Creole parts that you might slip in there for a little spice. And remember, don't put in too much spice. Too much spice get heartburn. So, accurate use of grammar, effective use of grammar and vocabulary, of course. You want to show that, yes, you know a few big words, but please, I caution you. Yes, you want to use some big words, but 1, please make sure you know what the word means. 2, please make sure you use the word correctly because you don't want to embarrass yourself up there. Your teacher marking you for all of that. And you should show a high degree of fluency and, of course, a rich vocabulary. So, remember now, again, can't stress this too much. Only the plan for the oral presentation goes into the portfolio. You don't write out the poem or the story or the speech and include it. You only submit the plan that we looked at earlier. Please remember that. I beg you, don't stress out your teacher. So the individual participation measure. Remember, I mentioned this last week that you're graded how you work together as a group. Basically, this will be an interview that your teacher will do with you twice. And notice the things that you will be asked. So get ready to show how these things coming out. So you'll be asked if you knew about what you were supposed to do and if you knew that you were supposed to work with a team. Yes, you do, because I told you so. Are you able to focus on what is taking place in your group? please say yes and please mean it. How do you feel about the group? And things like you feel confident with the group and that sort of thing. No, I know, up to since week, not everybody loves working in a group. However, part of your assessment is how well you work within a group. So even if you are a lone wolf, power to you. Please remember, even wolves need a pack sometimes. So work together with your group mates. Next question she'll ask, or he will ask, did you know how to manage how you behave in the group? You should be able to say yes with confidence. And did you manage your tasks on time and thoroughly? This is where that little time management thing comes in. So you should be able to say yes to this as well. Remember, this will happen twice. And your teacher should know you well enough, so don't tell her no lie, don't tell him no lie. They will know you're lying. Now, the next group component that you're marked on is the quality of work within groups. This part is the one I told you, where is the one mark for everybody. So you need to ensure that you get everybody on board. Now, you're marked for communication. For the full 2 marks, all the members have seen, read, and discussed the plan of work. So everybody in the group knows what it is that's going on in the group. Everybody in the group is aware of what the members are doing, who has what responsibility, that sort of thing. You're marked for collaboration. Members seek out and are aware of what all members of the group are doing. So remember, that's 4 marks right there just for knowing what everybody in your group doing and for letting everybody in your group know what you're doing. Please don't throw them away. They're very important. So for the maximum 3 marks for reflection, the group members engage in reflection on work at the end of all the activities or sessions. Basically what it's saying, when you have a little group meeting, all of you decide, you come together for one particular purpose. At the end of it, you must have come to some kind of conclusion, some kind of understanding. And then for interaction, it's a group. You're going to interact. So the members respect and appreciate each other and show empathy to all members. So one of your group members might not be feeling so well one day. You're not going to stress them out and say, you need to hurry up and done. No, you're going to understand that that person is feeling unwell, so you need to work around it. Somebody might have a sick relative. We all being affected by this COVID virus here. Somebody might have lost someone close to them. Somebody might be sick. So you need to remember these things and be empathetic towards your group mates. So here are the definitions for the different sections that were talked about. So there we go. Communication, process by which information is constructed and transmitted from person to person. Collaboration, social conditions of learning, developing affective skills, and continuing solving problems relating to acquiring language skills and so on. So collaboration, working together, helping each other. Reflection, of course, you're going over whatever it is that you've done, and you're looking at how you think about it, how you feel about it, that sort of thing. And then for interaction, again, you're in a group, so the way you talk to each other, the way you relate to each other. And in case you need to see these rubrics for yourself, they're all available at csec.org. So once you log on there, everything will be there for you. And here are some useful sites that you can visit too. Of course, csec.org, that is your examining body, so you need to go there. All Purdue for help with how to do your sourcing information, your in-text citation, how to write up your different things. Padlet that I mentioned last week for you to collaborate, because you need to show evidence of collaboration. So that's a good way to show your teacher that yes, you're collaborating. Google Docs as well to show evidence of you collaborating. And of course, TVJ social media platforms. So now that we've gone through basically all the elements, let's see how well that you understand. So I'm going to show you some faulty samples. And I need you to tell me, based on which sample you see, what you think is missing, what you think needs to go in, if anything that needs to come out. Tell me. So here's a faulty plan of investigation. Take a few seconds to read it and then tell me what you think is missing. So we have someone, they say they selected the theme of love in the tropics and it relates to the group's topic. And that's the group's topic, Caribbean lifestyle. They say what they expect to happen, what they intend to use, a song, a magazine article, a TV program. And they say that they expect to develop reading, writing, and speaking as their English skills. So let's have a look-see. Do you realize what is missing? You should. Here we go. So first of all, the reason for choosing the topic lacks insightfulness. So your author just said, I chose it because the group's topic is this, so I chose that. Even if that was really the case, don't say it. Please don't. Remember, you're supposed to give an insightful reason. So something that is more personal than that, which is why I've been emphasizing, pick something personal to you. No explanation was given of how the expected benefits to improve the research skills and vocabulary would be attained. So the writer said, yes, they're going to improve research skills and vocab, but didn't say how. Next set of faults, no extensive list of potential data sources given. All this person did was write the 3 sources that would be used. And remember, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to show that you did a lot of things. And then no explanation of how English skills would be developed or utilized. All right. So there's a faulty reflection 1. Read that quick. What are the problems with this faulty reflection 1? Here they are. So no title, author, presenter, or source was stated. Extensive summation was given. You're not supposed to summarize. Remember, we said just 1 or 2 sentences. That's all you need. Minimal focus on how the piece influenced or impacted the thinking about the selected topic. So hardly anything was said. And remember, that is actually the whole aim of reflection 1. That is the focus of it. And here's a faulty reflection 2 now. All right, so what's wrong with this one? The type of discourse is not identified. And because it wasn't identified, the associated features couldn't be discussed. The language techniques they weren't specified. And because they weren't specified, no insightful comments could be given. All right, faulty reflection 3 now. All right. So, of course, the skills and attributes to be developed were not clearly identified. There was no discussion of how they were going to be developed. So you couldn't get the full marks. And remember, all 3 of those put together give you 5 marks. So where you fall in one, you're going to fall in all. So you have to try and ensure that each reflection stands up to muster, stands up to scrutiny, and that you are able to maximize the marks. Nobody should be coming out of CSEC with 2 little marks. You need to come out with, All right? So that's it for CSEC English Language. Up next, CSEC Mathematics.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.
here. Interactive classes for all ages on the School Time channel on onespotmedia.com. With a combination of live Zoom classes and recorded class time, Schools Not Out lessons, and numerous educational content, we've created a comprehensive 24-hour channel dedicated exclusively to educating our nation's youth. Early childhood through to primary, secondary and tertiary, it's one stop on one spot for education 24 hours. Brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information in association with Television Jamaica Limited.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.
Good day, students. Welcome back to class time. I am Latoya Shiraya.
And I am Tyrone Brown.
And we are your CSEC math teachers for this session. Today, we're going to look at measures of central tendencies. All right, so as we said, today we're going to be determining measures of central tendency for raw and ungrouped data, grouped and ungrouped. When we talk about measures of central tendency, we're looking at a number that represents the central or the typical value of a data set. And we call those statistical averages. Now, the most common statistical averages that we look at or we talk about are mean, mode, and median. And we all know these. And so I'm going to ask Tyrone just to remind our viewers what are mean, mode, and median. But before we get there, Sabrina, a friend of mine, she wants to start a small business where she buys and sells slippers in her community. She remembered her math teacher mentioning how statistical averages can help entrepreneurs, but cannot recall which of the averages could be useful in deciding what are the best slippers sizes to start her business with. Tyrone, now you and I need to remind Sabrina about the statistical averages and help her to decide which of those averages would help her to start her business right.
Okay, thank you, Latoya. Firstly, we have the mean, and that is the common average most persons are familiar with. It is a number which represents the typical value if the data set was equally distributed. Statisticians prefer to think of this as the central or balance point. The mean can be found by taking the sum of the data values divided by the number of data points.
All right.
This diagram below shows bars, which represent the cost of 6 toys. How can we use the stack of cubes to determine what the price would be if the toys were of the same price? We want to rearrange the cubes to a level price or make the price the same for each item.
All right, so basically you want me to level off the cubes.
Yes.
All right then, okay. So we have the cubes here. And if we were to level off all these cubes such that each of the toy would cost the same price, we will have each toy being sold at, is that $6?
Yes.
$6.
$6 each.
Okay, and then this now is actually a visual representation of what we mean when we say finding the mean of a data set. You basically want to find that value that would be fair across the board for everybody in the data set.
Yes, that is right, Latoya.
All
and
right.
you notice that each bar has the same value once it's evenly distributed.
Yeah.
So that represents the mean or
All
the
right.
average cost for one toy.
Okay. All right, mode.
Next, the mode is the most frequent number in our distribution. That is the number which occurs the most.
All right.
In this diagram, you will see that is also represented by the highest bar in the distribution. If no number in the list is repeated, then there is no mode in the list. There can be many, or there can be more than one modal value in the distribution.
Okay, so you're saying that a data set or distribution can have one mode, it can have no mode, or it can have more than one
yes,
mode.
it can have many.
Okay, all right. Median.
The median is the middle value if the data is sorted in order, and it can be done in either ascending order or decreasing order. All data points are then, after sorting, you can pick out the middle value
All right.
from those data points. And this is how we would arrange the data. So you would see the upper values that are unordered as it is right now, and then we go about ordering it, in this case, in ascending order, and then the middle value from that data set is the median.
Okay, so median, middle.
Yes.
All right.
If there are two numbers in the middle, we can take the mean of those two numbers, and that will give us the median.
And we know what the mean is from before.
Yes.
All right. So, back to Sabrina now. So, which of these measures of central tendency would best help Sabrina with her slippers business? Is it the mean? Do we need to find the average of the sizes that, are for the people in our community, their foot sizes? Or do we find the mode, which is the most number of one particular foot size? Or do we find the median, the middle value of the slipper sizes? Which of these now will help Sabrina to say, okay, I can use this value to tell me how to start my business?
Latoya, I am thinking if it is Sabrina wanted to cater to the needs of most of our customers,
right,
then she would want to find the one that most customers would want to buy.
Right.
And that would be the mode.
Definitely. So Sabrina or anybody else out there, if you're starting a slippers business, you want to buy the size slippers that most of the people in your community or your customer, that size that them wear. Thank me later. All right. Here's an activity. So we have some raw data here below, and this represents the number of deaths caused by coronavirus, COVID-19, during the week of November 8 to 14, 2020. And Tyrone, I want you to tell the viewers and help the viewers to find out what is the mean number of deaths for the week November 8 to 14.
Okay. You're seeing basically on the distribution that there are 7 numbers there representing each day of the week, right? And if it is we wanted to find the mean, we would have to find the sum of all the debts that occurred during the week.
Right.
And divide that number by 7.
All right. So?
And that would be, as is here, 0 plus 3 plus 1 and so on, divided by 7, which is 10 divided by 7.
Okay, and that gives us a value of?
That gives us a value of 1.43, and that is going to be rounded to 2 debts per week.
Wait, Tyrone, hold on here now. So when I find the mean, the exact value of the mean of the number of debts for this week here is 1 and 43 hundredths, or 1.43. And you're telling me when you round that, you get 2? But what I know of rounding off is the fractional portion is closer to 1, so I round down and I would get 1. How comes you get 2?
Think about it this way, Latoya.
All right.
Suppose you and your family were going on a trip. There were 7 of you, but the car can only hold 5 persons at a time.
All right.
How many cars would you need to take? Would it be 1 car or 2 cars?
Okay, so 7 away, the car can hold 5. So I can put 2 in the trunk? No?
No, you can't put 2 in the trunk.
All right, so I'm going to have to take a second car. So I have 2 cars, 5 in 1 and 2 in 1. Or we can share it up any other way, but I'd have 2 cars.
Yes. So in that case, you realize that although the average would have been 1.4,
right,
we would still need to round up because we needed an additional car to hold the excess people.
Oh, so we have to account for those persons. We can't just leave them.
Yes, we can't just leave them.
I got you. Okay. All right. So then what is the modal number of debts for the week?
In this case, you would see that 2 is the number that is most frequent.
Right.
Therefore, the modal debts for that week would be 2.
Okay. Easy. I see 2 coming up more or most, so definitely. All right. And then the median number of debts for the week.
As we had discussed earlier, first, this data set is not in a good way for us to actually analyze our median.
Okay.
We would need to arrange it in some order.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and choose the ascending order.
All right, no problem.
So as it is, we have arranged our data in ascending order, and I am seeing the middle term to be another 2. 2 to be the value for the median.
Okay, so our median is 2. So our mean is 2, our mode is 2, and our median is 2.
Yes, so what is that saying to you?
Well, as we stated before, all 3 of these measures of central tendencies are actually averages. And if I'm getting that all 3 values are the same, then that will tell me that approximately 2 persons were dying per day.
Yes.
During for this
period.
week.
Yes.
For this week.
Yes,
for
definitely.
the week of November 8 to 14, I believe. All right. All right, Tyrone. So as the student council representative or president, Nicola approached you about the challenges faced by the students in her grade 10 history class. She mentioned that the entire class was not doing well, and the class average was below the 60% mark. So I'm going to show you a frequency table of the results, and we need to discuss if Nicola has a legitimate concern. Is it that all the students or majority of the students are not doing so badly and they need some intervention over that grade 10 class? So here is the frequency table. How can we help Nicola here now?
First, I think we'd need to get some more information.
Okay.
So I think we'll start off with the range of scores.
All right.
And the range is the spread of values in a data set.
Okay.
And in this case, the range of values would be 80 minus 0, which is 80.
All right. So why we do 80 and 0?
Because we're taking the highest score that the students got in the class, which is 80.
Right.
We're subtracting from that the lowest score, which is 0.
Okay, so we're looking at the 2 end values, highest and lowest, and that will determine the spread of values, like how far apart the first value is, the lowest is from the highest value.
Yes, and it's also giving us an indication as to the different in the performance of the students.
Ah, the gap.
So you had some students who were doing really well and some who were doing really poorly.
Okay, okay. All right.
So next, I think we'd want to look at the mode.
Okay. And we're seeing that the mode from this table is 70. I get 70 because I'm seeing from the frequency of all the percentages, 70 have 15 students getting a percentage of 70%.
So most students got 70.
Most of the students were getting
Yes.
70%.
So that would be the mode for the class. Most of them
right.
getting 70.
Okay.
Then we'd want to look at also the median.
All right.
And there is one way for us to look at it in terms of looking at the way we did before, finding the sum of all the data values. Here
The
you will
median.
see.
No, ma, we'll
Sorry.
list out, yeah.
We're listing all the
Yeah.
data values.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes, yes.
In ascending
In
order
ascending
from
order in
smallest
this
to
case,
highest.
and we're trying to find which one falls in the middle
All right.
of the distribution.
So I'm just we're count from the front.
I'm seeing
and
here
the
probably
end.
about 30, so it's about 15th and 16th element, which falls in the
Okay.
middle.
So we have two values in the middle. And I remember earlier you said when we have two values in the median position, then we find the mean of those two values. And we do that by just simply adding and dividing by the number of values, which is 2. And we will get back 70 in this case. It might not always be if you have two different values, then you have to actually, when you do the calculation, it might not end up being one of the values from the middle. All right?
Yes, I completely agree.
All right. So what do we do next?
So finally, we'd want to know the mean. And
All
that
right.
was what Sabrina was talking about.
Okay.
Nicola was talking
Nicola,
about.
yes.
Yes. So again, we'd want to find out the total value or the total score for all the students in the class. And we can go ahead by in this case, we want to add up all the score. But we
Right.
find there are 3 other students who got 0.
From the table, we
From
can
the
see
table,
that.
we can see that. 2 of them getting 40.
Right.
So that's 80. 2 of them also getting 50, and so on, right?
So I'm seeing you on here, we're multiplying the frequency by the score.
Yes, and that will give you the
Total.
the subtotal for each group of students.
Okay.
So the group of students who got 0, the group of students who got 40, and so on.
Okay.
So the overall total for all the students was 1,770.
Okay.
And we divided that by 30 because there are 30 students in the class,
Right.
and that will give us a mean of 59.
All right. And Nicola did say that the average for the class, and I'm sure she was referring to the mean at that time, is below 60. So here we're seeing that the mean is 59, the mode is 70, and the
Median was 70.
median was 70.
Yes.
But so here we're having now two different values. So we have 270 and we have a 59.
So it's for us to determine which is going to be our most appropriate in this situation.
Right,
If
but-
that 59 or the 70 would best represent the data set.
But
that we
does
have.
Nicole have a legitimate concern though? Is it a case where the entire class is performing below par?
No, I wouldn't say all the students in the class are performing below par because as you can see, there are approximately 23 out of the 30 students
Right.
who passed the exam.
Okay, so we're having 5 students getting 60, 15 getting 70, 3 getting 80%, which that is 23 of the 30, which suggests that
Doing well.
more students of the 30, because 23 in comparison to 7 is more. So we have more students actually performing up to and above par.
Yes, yes,
But
they were.
why the mean though is so low?
I'd want you to pull your attention to the students at the lower end of the distribution. Those 3 students who got 0.
Okay.
You realize that because their values, the score that they got was so far below everybody else, right? They are the ones who are actually pulling down the distribution. And we call those values that are extremely below or
Right.
extremely
Above.
above a distribution, extreme values or outliers.
Okay, so, so I have the solution for Nicole. She needs to go and talk to those
Yes.
3 students who got 0, and maybe the 4 that got 40 and 50. So the mean then might not be a good representation of the data set sometimes.
Yes, because if we
depending-
excluded those 3 persons, we definitely get a much higher mean.
And right, and it would have a better class average, and it
Yes.
wouldn't look as if the entire class is performing
Yes,
badly.
yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so here we have another activity. David, must be my son, grew some carrots to make some extra money. He dug up 50 of the carrots and measured their mass to the nearest gram. And here I have a table, a frequency table representing David's carrots that he dug up. So I'm seeing, and if you were here last week Friday, you will remember that we spoke about creating frequency tables using class intervals. So we're seeing our class intervals in our left column and the frequency for the carrots that fall within those class intervals. All right, so we need to find the modal class and we need to determine the mean mass to the nearest gram for this data set. All right, Tyrone, help us now.
Okay. As you would have mentioned before, we're asked to find a modal class.
Right.
But we had done some discussion before about what the mode is.
Right.
Can you remind me what the mode was again?
The most frequent value in the data set.
Okay. And the class interval, because we're talking about a class in this situation.
So it's mode and class come together.
So it is the mode and the class combined together. So we're looking
Right.
for the class with the highest frequency.
Like that.
Yes.
And from the table, we can clearly see that that is 60 to 64 grams interval.
Yes, that is
Because there is
quite
a
good.
20 of the carrots would have weighed between 60 to 64 grams. All right.
So that class interval is the modal class.
All righty. So we talk about the modal class. We're talking about the class interval with the highest mode
Frequency.
or frequency.
Yes.
Yeah, the highest frequency, sorry. All right, so we need to now find the mean mass to the nearest gram. How we do this now?
You're looking at the data, right?
Yes.
Can you remind me about something? Do we know exactly how many of those 7 carrots were 50 and how many of them were 54 grams?
I was just about to ask you because I wasn't there when David was weighing the carrots.
So we are finding ourselves with a little problem because
Yes.
we are not sure exactly how many of them were 50 and how many of them were 54 grams
Right.
in mass. So therefore, we'll have to use another value as an estimator for the mass of those 7 carrots in the first class.
Okay.
And for that purpose, we're going to be using the midpoint.
Oh, okay. All right. The midpoint. And we did speak about the midpoint last week, Friday. But just a reminder, if you don't remember, and for those who weren't here, the class midpoint is found by summing the lower and upper class limits and dividing that by 2. Or you can just say finding the mean of the upper and the lower class limit for each class interval. All right? So we're just going to do that quickly. So for the first class, or midpoint would be 50 plus 4 divided by 2, right, Tyrone?
Yes, so that would be 52.
Right. And then for the second class, we have 55 plus 59 divided by 2, which is...
57.
Tyrone, you're bright, man. 60 plus 64 divided by 2, that is...
62.
62.
Oh, but Latoya, I'm seeing a trend.
Yeah?
I'm seeing that the midpoint seems to be increasing by 5. What could be
5 each
causing
time?
that? I'm already seeing something because 5 plus the 52 gives us 57 and 5 plus the 57 gives us 62.
Okay, and I'm also seeing where the class intervals have a a size of 5 in each interval. Oh, the class width.
The class width,
The
yes.
class
The
width.
class width
Oh.
is also 5.
So that means then that if our class width for our intervals is 5, that means the difference in our midpoint, the width there in the midpoint is also 5.
It's also going to be 5 because those are the values that we use to determine the midpoint.
Ah, I see. All right.
So it will have the same distribution.
Okay.
So those are the estimates for the value of the mass of each carat in the different classes, right? So we'd want to find out the total mass of all the 50 carats.
Yes.
So we have 7 carats, each having approximate mass of 52 grams. So how would we go about finding the mass for those 7 carats?
Well, seeing that we're using the midpoint, and we can just multiply.
Yes, because we are saying each of them is 52.
Right,
and
an estimate,
yes,
right.
7 times 52 would give us the total for those 7 carats.
Okay, so all right, let's organize it a little. I think I want to call the frequency column F, and we're going to call the midpoint values X.
Yes, because that will help us in terms of the discussion.
Right, and so we are now finding F times X to get the total mass for each interval.
Yes.
All right, so when we multiply our F and our X's, these are the values that we will get.
But you're realizing that we are just getting the values for each class.
So we still now need to find the sum of the entire data set.
Yes, we need to go about doing that.
So we'll just add up the values from our F times X column. And we already know that the number of carats is 50, but we're still adding the frequency to show that it is 50. All right?
And when we do the division, we are getting approximately 60.4.
All right, but it asks to the nearest gram.
Yes. So if it is that we're going to be rounding this off, for the mass of each carat that David dug up, it would be approximately 60 grams for each carat.
Okay, so each carat is weighing approximately 60 grams. If we were to level off, as we said earlier, so each carat can weigh the same. Okay, all right. Wow, Tyrone. But, Tyrone, earlier when we spoke, we rounded off 1.43 or 1 43 hundredths.
And we got 2, right?
And we got 2. So now we're rounding off again, and it's basically the same 0.4, but we round down. So how comes we round up earlier, and now we are rounding down?
Okay, in the first scenario, we were looking at what type of data set. That's what we need to think about.
Okay, the first scenario, we're looking at number of deaths, so that's discrete because it
was discrete, and we spoke about that last week in terms of the difference between discrete and continuous data.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so that was discrete, and we realized that for the discrete variables, once you would have passed a value, you would have to round up to get to the next discrete value above it.
Oh, because you have to account for the individual values.
Yes, for the remainder. That happens after the division.
Okay, and in that case, we were talking about the number of deaths, and even though we don't have a fractional person, and we still have to account for that person.
Yes.
So we have to round up in that case. All right. So talk to me now about this value. So we're talking about mass here.
Yes. In this case, we're looking at a different type of data set. And what type of data set are you basically seeing
All right,
here?
so we're talking about the mass of carats and measuring. And last time when we talked about measurement, those values are continuous data set values, all right?
So that would be a continuous data set. We could have left it as 60.4, because that would have been an acceptable answer.
Right.
If it is we weren't asked to round it off to the nearest whole number.
Okay.
But in this case, because we're asked to round it off to the nearest whole number, and it is a discrete data set.
Continuous, sorry.
Yes. It's a continuous data set. We'll use the same rules that we'd have learned about rounding.
Okay.
Once it is, you would have been below 0.5 or halfway, you would round down.
Okay, so what you're saying, what I'm getting from you now, Tyrone, is that for the discrete data set, we have to take into consideration all of the values. So you don't have half of a person, you don't have half of a foot, but I mean a shoe, yeah, one in your foot, or a half of a dog. So we're talking about those discrete values. You have to take into consideration the other number. So you want to round up to account for
you wouldn't
those
have fractional
values.
figures, so
Right.
you'd have to round up to account for those that would remain after the division.
Okay, and then now we're talking about continuous data. We can stick to the regular rule of rounding off, which is if it is closer to one value, we round up, and if it's closer to the lower value, we round down.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. I hope you got that at home. All right, so here we have a CSEC question, and it says the table below shows the number of goals scored in 25 football matches. And here we have the table, and they want us to find 1, the modal number of goals scored, and 2, okay. We're finding the modal number of goals scored.
Let's start with the first one, yes.
All right.
So, the data is not how we would normally see it, right?
Right.
Because they're asking us for the number of goals scored, right? And that the frequency in this case would be the matches, the number of matches.
Right.
So I want everybody to pick up where the frequency would be, which would be the number of matches.
So you don't always see the word frequency on a table. So when you get the table now, you have to determine which of the values represent the frequency
and which represents the data.
Okay. Number of goals scored be the frequency?
No, because you're trying to find out how many goals scored. Right?
Okay.
How many goals scored. So if it is, I had a match, say for example, I had 7 matches and 5 goals were scored during that 7 match.
Okay.
Then the number of matches in which 7 goals were scored would be 5.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So what is the modal number of goals scored?
So we're trying to look for the highest frequency first because we're looking for a modal value, right? So that is the first thing we're trying to pick up, the highest frequency. And we're saying the number of matches gives us the frequencies.
Yes.
Therefore, I'm seeing the largest value in that to be 7.
Okay.
So the highest frequency is 7.
All right, so that means that also, so okay, so the highest frequency is 7, and that is for 1 goal.
For 1 goal.
Okay.
So 1 goal occurs in most of the matches
Okay.
that are being played.
Okay, so that means that the modal number of goals scored would be 1 goal. All right, got you. I hope you at home are getting it as well. What was the median number of goals scored? All right, so we spoke about earlier that we can look at listing out all of the goals,
values.
all of the values in the data. But if we have the data already organized in a frequency table, we don't need to list it out. What we need to find is the middle. So we know that is 25 football matches, and where would that middle number fall, that middle number of goals?
I am thinking half of 25 matches would be 12.5.
All right.
But it's an odd number, so I know that one number will be in the middle.
Right, so it will be in the middle of 12, the 12th and the 13th.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
match.
So it's actually it's one number, so it's going to be between the 12th and the 14th. So it's actually going to be the 13th value.
Okay, oh, yes.
Because it's only one number that will fall.
It's one
so you'll
number.
be having a 12 on one side,
12 on the other side,
and then the
1 in the
25th,
middle.
1 in the middle.
Okay, all right. So that would be what now?
So we're trying to find the 13th element from the data set, and we're starting from the ascending side. Let's start from that side.
Sure.
So I'm seeing 5 of them got 0. So that and
No goal.
Yes, 0 goals, and 7 of them score. 7 matches would have 1 goal. So I already have 12 matches so far.
Okay.
And I need 1 more match to reach the 13th match.
Right.
So that would be one of those matches in which 2 was scored.
All right, so I'm trying to visualize it now. So I'm not going to write so I'm trying to visualize it. If I'm supposed to write out the values in ascending order, I'm going to write 5 zeros first, and then I'm going to write 7 ones, because I'm writing out the data values now, And so that is already 12 values right there, so.
And we need 1 more.
And we're looking for the 13th value. So that 13th value position, I would be writing a 3. Is it?
A 2.
A 2, sorry, yes, a 2.
We wanted to know the number of goals scored in that match.
Right, so
it would be 2.
So that means that the modal number of goals scored would be?
Median.
The median?
Yes, the median in this case would be 2.
Yes, the median number of goals would be 2.
And that would be scored in the 13th match.
And that would be scored in the 13th match. So just to repeat if you're feeling a little bit confused. Here we go. So you can find the median by writing out the values in ascending or descending order. But that's if you have a small number of values. You don't want to take all the time writing out all the values. So if you already have a frequency table and your data is already organized, this is what you need to do. You're going to find the middle position for your median. Now in this case, we have 25 football matches, which means that our median would be in the middle of 25. And we know that the median, which is dividing by 2 there, would be 13. So our median would be in the 13th position. So looking at the number of goals scored now, we want to find out which of these number of goals will fall in the 13th position. So we already have 5 zeros, no goal, 7 matches scoring 1 goal, and that is 12 matches already, and we now want the 13th position. And so 2 matches with 2 goals would fall in the 13th position. See if you can visualize it with me. If you can't, write it out and see if you can see what I'm saying. All right, so our median number of goals would be 2 goals. All right. Okay, here is another CSEC question. So we have a class of 30 students, counted the number of books in their bag on a certain day. And if it is when I was going to school, oh my God, my shoulders used to hurt me with the number of books you have to carry.
Yeah, some people had a whole heap of books.
Listen, man, this online learning here is good for our shoulders and our backs. I tell you, for the kids, that is. All right, so using the table that I'm going to show you soon, we want to find out the total number of books, and we also want to find out the mean number of books in each bag. So we want to find out, the average number of books that is in each student's bag. If each student were supposed to have the same number of books, how many books would in each of the person's bag? So here we have our frequency table that is showing the number of books in 30 students' bag.
And as we would have done before, we would have to find out how many would be in each group, right?
Okay.
So we had 2 students having 1 book in their bag. Mm-hmm. That would be a total of 2 books.
Right.
And you would have 3 students with 2 books in their bags, and that would be 6 books.
I'm seeing a little error on our projector here, though, because what the tally is saying 3. We're having 3 strokes for the tally.
Yes.
But the frequency is actually saying 2. So that should have been 2 strokes for the tally column.
Oh, okay.
Right. So we actually have 2 persons with 1 book in their bag.
And we have 5 students with 3 books each. That would be 15 books for those 5 students. And we can continue going down, and that will give us the number of books for each of these groups of students.
Right.
So in order to find the total number of books for the entire class of 30, we would need to go ahead and find the total of that column that says frequency times midpoint. Frequency times x.
Frequency times x. Okay, no
Or
problem.
frequency times the number of books.
All right, so the total number of books in all the 30 students' bag is a whopping 127 books. Wow, for 30 students?
127 books, yes.
Jeez, my shoulder started hurting me already.
That's a whole lot of books.
100, and
But
by
that's
the
for
way,
the entire class still. So
but that's 30 and each book might be so heavy.
I'm not too
Them chemistry
concerned
books
about.
are heavy, man.
Okay, so we need to go ahead now and use this information to find out the mean number of books.
All right. And
So
I wonder if they can find it out at home.
they should be able to.
They should be able to. Find it out at home, post it on Facebook, tag TVJ, and we'll know if you got it right. All right? That's the time. Unfortunately, we have for CSEC Mathematics. Up next, Cape Communication Studies.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.
Welcome back to class time. It's now time for CAPE Communication Studies. I am your teacher, Kelleen Ayton. Today's topic is primary and secondary sources and evaluating sources. So today we will focus on Module 1, Gathering and Processing Information. The objectives from the CAPE Communication Studies Syllabus 2019 requires that students should be able to evaluate the effect of primary and secondary sources, context, and medium or channel on the reliability or validity of information. Also, students should be able to evaluate information about current events. So what are today's specific objectives? At the end of the lesson, you students should be able to distinguish between primary and secondary sources, define key terms such as validity, reliability, and credibility, as well as evaluate a source using the TARP approach. Let us begin. Kamara wants to get some information on how to get a student loan for the approaching new school term. She knows that her friend Cassie recently applied for a student loan and was successful. Kamara decides to ask Cassie about the details and process involved. After getting the information from Cassie, Kamara decides to call the Students' Loan Bureau herself to confirm that the information she has received from Cassie is correct. All right, students, so you get the scenario. Kamara wants a student loan. She asks her friend information first of all, and then she goes to the bureau herself. So we all understand the scenario. So, what do you notice about the two ways Kamara gets the information? So, think about it before I reveal my question, my answer. What are the two ways she got her information? Okay, so let's look now. Firstly, she asked her friend Cassie. And then she called the Students' Loan Bureau herself. So students, what am I talking about? We are noticing here that information supplied from the Students' Loan Bureau is a primary source. Kamara went there and she got it firsthand. While the information supplied from Cassie is a secondary source because she went through somebody and who already had the experience. So it's not as direct as going to the bureau herself. So I've been talking about primary sources, secondary sources. What do I mean by sources? Now, in the context, students, of research, sources refer to a place, a person, or a document from which information is obtained. May I interject here? Once you're engaging in research, you must get outside information. You cannot, will not, and shall not base your research on what you feel or what you think or what you have heard from others. You must use what we call reputable sources. And this is what we're going to talk about a little more. So, as I said a little bit earlier, there are primary types of the sources can be considered primary and secondary. What's the difference between them? For a primary source, they are first-hand records of an event. Remember, I said Kamara went straight to the bureau, so she got that information first hand. They are written, created, or recorded during the period under investigation. And then we have secondary sources. That's when Kamara asked Cassie about her experience. So they are usually written or produced after the event that they purport to comment on. So remember that, students, two types, primary and secondary. Let us talk a little bit more about the primary and secondary sources, because I want you to be very clear, crystal clear, on what are features of a primary, what are the features or characteristics of the secondary source. So let's talk about the primary sources first. They are eyewitness accounts of first records of events. Eyewitness. Okay? They are original sources on which interpretation, analysis, and studies are based. I like that word, original. They tend to be narrative in style rather than analytical or evaluative. They also tend to be subjective in nature. Do you remember that word, subjective? So this means that it tends to be biased because you're hearing just one side of the story. And they are obtained chiefly through observation, survey, and experiments. Let's go over to the secondary side. What are these characteristics of a secondary source? They comment on a primary source, offering explanation, evaluation, and interpretation. Let's go again. They may offer answers and solutions to queries and questions raised by primary sources. So they are working on something that is actually in existence already. They tend to be analytical and interpretive in nature. They may attempt to be objective now. So we looked at subjective earlier. Objective, so there is room for other person's opinion on this matter. And they are balanced depending on their purpose and the author. They are obtained mainly through documentary media. And this is from McDermott 2013. So what are some examples of primary and secondary sources based on the definition that has been provided? So a diary, an interview, your survey, your observation, works of art, official and private records, pictures, artifacts, oral history. So students, you're home now. Think about something in your surrounding, your environment that could be a primary source. Yes, so a photo album for argument's sake, a picture that you have on the wall, that's primary. Let's talk about the secondary now. Literature review, your textbooks, magazines, journal, newspaper, a dictionary, your atlas, encyclopedia, and these are just some examples. So what do you have close by that could be a secondary source? You may have them all over your table right now, your books. Okay, so we want to be clear, you should be clear now on what are examples of primary sources and what are secondary sources. Let us get busy now. We are going to do a quick activity. Get your pencils or pen and your paper to write. So you're going to group the following under the headings: primary sources, secondary sources. So because of time, I just want you to write P if it's primary or S if you think it is a secondary source. Let's get ready. So as I read, you write. COVID-19 questionnaire filled out by visitors entering the island. Is it primary? Is it secondary? Put down that letter. Emily Crook's interview with Desmond Ballantyne, Ninja Man. sports news commentary aired on television 5 hours after the match was played. A new publication in honor of Frederick Hibbert Toots and his contribution to Jamaican music. CAPE results data sheet on the number of passes in communication studies for Knutsford High School. And the final one, lab book used to record findings from experiments done in your biology class. I'm sure you have your answers now, so let us look at what you should have. So for the primary sources students, tick them on, tick them off. Your COVID-19 questionnaire, good. The interview with Emily Crooks, the CAPE results, and the lab book, those are, well, I'm seeing here, the lab book should be over, oh, the lab book, right, that's your experiment, sorry, that's primary. And for the secondary sources now, the sports news commentary, and of course, the publication, the book, in honor of Toots. I'm sure you all got them correct. So we're going to be moving on to these 3 terms: reliability, credibility, and validity. We must use these words as we engage in research. We must use them. So what do we mean by reliability? What do we mean by credibility? What do we mean by validity? Let's go. So again, we're going to start with an activity. So you're going to listen to me reading and then look at the answers. Listen for the answers. So this is at the Westminster International Airport. And this is a conversation between the attendant and a passenger. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the Westminster International Airport. May I please have your travel documents? And the passenger says, good morning, ma'am. Yes, you may. Oh, Mr. Small, your passport has expired. Today is November 12th, 2020, and the expiry date is September 10, 2020. Unfortunately, you will not be able to travel today, sir. You will have to renew your passport before you can travel. But ma'am, isn't the picture a true reflection of me? Yes, sir. I will not deny that. However, you must travel with a valid passport and visa. I am sorry, sir, but that is the rule. What an unfortunate situation. And maybe some persons have found themselves in that position. So based on the scenario I just read, why was Mr. Small unable to travel? What does Mr. Small want the attendant to use to allow him to travel, and why? Why does Mr. Small carry his passport and not his birth certificate? So, students, let's think about the first question. Why wasn't he able to travel? What does he want the attendant to allow him to use? So definitely, he is unable to travel because his passport has expired. It's invalid at this moment. What does he want the attendant to use to allow him to travel, and why? So he's saying, guess what? I have my passport here, there is my picture. But guess what, students? The photo, yes, it could be a true picture of him, but listen, remember that although a photo is provided, there may be physical changes within 10 years. You know that they just last for 10 years. And so questions about credibility come into play, so he can't use the passport anymore. And the third question was, why does he carry his passport and not a birth certificate? We know that the required travel document in his country is a passport, and that is considered a reliable source of identification. Remember, it has a specific code there. It has a lot of information necessary, its travel history, and so forth. Thus, we see that credibility and validity work together in most cases. So students, just in case you're still blank or, unclear about what these words actually mean, let me provide some definitions. Reliability. We are saying if a source is reliable, it can be depended on to be consistent. So we are talking about consistency, yielding the same results. It can be trusted. So for credibility now, what are we talking about? The source is believable. We can accept it. And for validity, there should be evidence that it is relevant to the issue being discussed, that the information can be supported, and that the information is convincing, logical, and irrefutable. Please ensure, students, that you understand this. You're going to be seeing these words. You're going to be using them particularly in your IA. So you have to be clear on what each means. And as you choose your sources, you need to put these to the test. Again, here we go. Scenario 1. The students in Shania's physics class at Belfield High are placed in groups of 5 to carry out an experiment. Shania is placed in group 2. All students are given the same instructions and steps to follow. On completion of the experiment, Shania's team got a different result from the other groups. Which of the following is affected in the experiment? Is it A, reliability, B, credibility, C, validity? Did the experiment, but her results differ. What's the answer, guys? Certainly reliability. Remember, reliability has to do with consistency, yielding the same results. Scenario 2. Jacinth is doing a research on the effects of the prolonged wearing of eyelash extensions on the eyes of teenagers. Interesting topic. Which of the following would be the best source of information? Is it A, Dr. Brown, her general practitioner? Is it B, Miss Black, who has been wearing eyelash extensions for the last 6 months? Is it C, Dr. White, an ophthalmologist? Or is it D, Miss Pink, a beautician who sells eyelash extensions? Best source of information for a topic of this nature. What's your answer? I'm sure you have selected C, Dr. White, the ophthalmologist. And why is that so? We are looking for the best. And of course, this is his area of expertise. This is his specialist area. Scenario 3. Jasmine is doing her communication studies internal assessment on the causes of the increased number of diabetic children in the Jamaican context, or society rather. She finds an article on the internet entitled "Excessive Consumption of Sugary Beverages by Canadians Results in Spike in Diabetic Cases." What's the question? What aspect of her research would be affected if she uses this article she has found? Again, the options are the same: validity, reliability, or credibility. Let's look at the question, guys. Diabetic children in the Jamaican society. And what's the article she found? Yes, diabetic cases, Canadian context. What is affected here? So it is the validity. So the information does not exactly relate to her research question. Jacinth had said that she's looking on the Jamaican society. Where is this article based on in terms of the context? Canada. And she was specifically interested in children. Now we are not sure. Is it males, females, boys, girls, children? We don't know. So it would not be relevant to her context. Scenario 4. Shauna, you hear this news? Dr. Rocky Robin died yesterday at the Castleton Hospital due to complications caused by COVID-19. Shauna replies, really? Where did you get that news? It's all over Facebook. Check your phone. Really now? You better check your source before you spread propaganda. Let me call his daughter who works at my office to see if there's any such news. And so Shauna makes the call. K, same thing. His daughter just confirmed his death from a heart attack. I'm telling you, girl, we have to be so careful where we get information and how we use it. Now, students, very interesting. Something we can all identify with. Always on our phones, always on Facebook, Instagram, name it, we're there. And we're always spreading information. So, what can we learn from this scenario now? The first lesson we can learn, it is important that we verify information before we spread it. The second lesson you can learn is that you must use reputable sources. Where did she get this information from? Facebook. Then we must evaluate our sources, and we're going to talk about that shortly. And finally, do not use a source just because you find one. So you enter your key terms in that search engine, and of course, a lot of information comes up, and you just say, all right, this is the first one, this is what I'm using. I have no time to go and sort. No, no, no. You'll find yourself in serious trouble. So this leads us, now that we understand validity, reliability, and credibility, how exactly do we go about evaluating a source? You need to find sources, reputable sources for your IA and for any research that you are engaging in. So how do you go about evaluating those sources? So the first thing I want to say to you students, always select scholarly, and I use the word reputable at times, books, newspaper articles. Notice what I have in red? Not news items such as eyewitness reports. Those will be highly subjective. Journal articles, government documents, reputable websites, so our .gov or .edu or .org. Not to say that .com doesn't, but we can trust these definitely. So what I want to share with you this morning as well is the acronym TARP. For me, I learn easier, or I remember things when I attach an acronym to it. And so I want to share with you this morning, students, the acronym TARP. T-A-A-R-P. And this will guide you, this will help you when you find a source and you want to know if yes, it passed the test of being scholarly and or reputable. So, T for time, A for author, A for audience, R for relevance, P perspective, and the other P purpose. So, let's go. So, T, time. What do I mean by time in terms of evaluating? So it's not that time on your watch. I'm talking about currency. how recent is your source? Remember, for your IA, you're required to come up with topics that are trending, things that are happening now. We don't want any historical research, right? Choose current information. And most books will tell you that don't go further than 5 years. Some will say 10, but definitely, students, we're not going back after 10. So it's 2020 now. Try to keep no further than 2010. And I want to also remind you that currency does not justify reliability or validity. What do I mean by that? Because something is current doesn't mean that you can trust it. So right now, maybe a couple seconds, right as I'm speaking now, somebody has uploaded something on Wikipedia. Isn't that very current? Right now, somebody is uploading something on Facebook, Instagram, name it. That's very current. But can we always trust what is there? So don't make that mistake of using currency to justify reliability and or validity. And then we're on to our first A in TARP, the author. What do I mean by the author? I want to explain to you, students, sometimes you find an article, you will find persons' names who definitely are considered the authors. However, in some instances, it's the organization's name that is there. You will not find a person attached. What am I saying? So if you find an article, for instance, from World Health Organization or CDC, Centers for Disease Control, you are not going to find John Taylor's name there. You are going to, the organization's name alone will stand there. Now you need to do your background checks, whether it's on the author or authors or on the organization. We need to evaluate our sources. So what are some of the questions? What are some of the things that we can look for as we find these sources or on the author? The level of qualification or the level of education. So students, we want to know, is it a first degree? Is it a master's? Is it a PhD? Of course, the higher the level, we have more comfort in using or trusting these persons. Their area of qualification, students, not because somebody has the highest level of education means that that person has authority to speak on or write about any and every subject matter in the world. What am I saying? So if I have a PhD in English language, for argument's sake, I have no Latin part, no business over in the sciences. And so you have to do your research to find out if the persons are writing in the discipline to which they have studied. Now, also their place of work. We want to find out, are these persons, is this person working or has worked in the area in which they are writing? Check to see their years of service. Yes, man, how long have they been around? Have they written other papers on the topic? That's something else that you can check on. You want to know if they have had other such writings. Have they been cited by other persons? Of course. If the person has been cited or quoted in other works on a similar topic, go ahead. This is speaking to his or her credibility. And have they cited their credentials? We need to check that out. The audience, students, what do I mean by that? You're my audience. So you need to check out how the person puts across that information. Who are the intended readers? If the writing, for instance, is for a specialist group or specialized group, then guess what? It may not be the best one for you because the language is going to be pitched at a level that you will have difficulty, a challenge, understanding. So we need to find out who are the intended readers before we select that. Why are they reading? So I'm going to just tie in purpose at this time here because we want to know, is it to inform? Is it to entertain? Because if it's a paper, that is focused on entertaining, hello, I don't think that's the paper that you should choose for your research paper. Check to see if the language is formal or informal. What do I mean by that? So formal writing will be free of certain things. You shouldn't be seeing any grammatical errors. You should not be seeing any sentence structure errors. And you may say, Miss, how am I going to know that? You know we're quick at finding out other person's faults than our own. Check to see if they are using contractions, a lot of pictures for aesthetics. No, that's not going to be your type of paper. And the R, relevance. What do I mean by relevance? Does the article relate to your topic? Now, students, remember the scenario we had earlier with the Canadian versus the Jamaican context. Don't just grab something and use it because the keywords or terms from your research paper are there. No, we cannot do that, students. And why? Because the information is going to be flawed. What am I doing with Canadian or Australian information in a research paper that clearly states we're talking about the Jamaican society? Erroneous information right there and then. Is it related to the subject matter being investigated in your research? Ask yourself that. Is the context correct? Then we go to the P, perspective. Is the writing objective or subjective? Students, I've explained those terms already. Let me do so again. If the writing is objective, it includes others' thoughts, other person's research, information on that topic. If it is subjective, it's my opinion and my opinion alone. So I am saying to you, make sure that whatever source you find is objective. They must have information on other persons who are reputable or trusted in that document that they can allude to or include information from their paper. We want multiple perspectives once we can trust these perspectives. We want balance. We just don't want to hear from the author. There must be balance in what you are saying. And when we have balance, it allows for the other side of the story to come into play. Sometimes, students, we have preconceived notions about what something should be. So we are accustomed to hearing that, yes, excess use of the smartphone may cause cancer. That's just hearsay. And so you find a couple articles, you're researching that topic, and you find a couple articles that, suggest that this is so. But somewhere, there is another that says, oh no, there is no evidence, and they provide evidence in their work that there is none. Not because 5 others are saying, yes, there is an association, you should not include the one that says there's no. We need balance in what we're saying. Once we can, trust the sources. So include sources that discuss the other side as well. Do not shy away from that. And the last P would have been purpose, and I spoke about that already. Why is the writer writing whatever it is? Is it to entertain, to inform, etc.? And so, students, just a little addition. So that's our TARP, or T for time, or A for author, or A for audience, or R for relevance, or P for purpose, and or P for perspective. So added to that, students, I also want to remind you about something else that you should look at when you're evaluating a source. Check to see if there's a bibliography or a reference. That's key. We know about the word plagiarism. We want to know where they got the information from. Have they included other persons? And if you have included works from other persons, then you should be able to acknowledge them in a bibliography and or a reference. Check for the place of publication, evidence of bias, and the sites. I started with that. I'm going to remind you, go for these trusted sites. All right. So Our final activity for today. Which of the following would best characterize the information which a researcher may get from Instagram and TikTok? Yes, man. Up and trending. Name them. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. So we're talking about these two. Which of these would characterize the information? Is it A, accuracy? Is it B, credibility? Is it C, reliability? Is it D, currency? Think about it, students. Instagram, TikTok, accuracy, credibility, reliability, currency. Have you found your answer? Yes, I know you have found it. And definitely it would be currency. And I don't have to even expound on that more. We know every second something is being uploaded. Every second we are being introduced to new information. But students, is it necessarily accurate? So it could be, as well as it may not be accurate. We need to be careful. Credible? Sometimes we see things. Do we know where it is coming from? No name attached. If persons have written and they can be cited, then they are trustworthy persons, they have experience in this, then they would not be afraid to attach their name, their qualification to that paper. All right? And reliability, we want to know that this information is consistent. So as we recap, students, these are the areas that we covered today. I know that you have learned, I've said a lot, and I know you have learned a lot too. So, types of sources, name them for me. You're correct. Primary and secondary sources. Let's go again. What are some examples of primary and secondary sources? Tell me one right in your room that you are now. So as I said, a picture that you may have of yourself on your cell phone. Then for the secondary, your textbook that you're writing in. Reliability, credibility, validity. Remind me now, reliability has to do with what? Consistency, sameness. Credibility, can I believe? And validity, students, we are talking about relevance. And finally, can you remember my TARP? Can you name it? Or T for time, or A for audience, or A for author, or R for relevance, or P for perspective and purpose. That's the time we have for CAPE Communication Studies. You can watch today's lessons again on onespotmedia.com and on JNN between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. Class time resumes tomorrow at 9:45 a.m. right here on TVJ. Until then, keep safe. Remember to wash your hands, sanitize, and wear your mask. Have a good day.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.